Now, after we have processed our words, we will return what we call here in this case trained text, but basically text that's prepared for analysis. The first method we will do is called counter, which will count um, top 10 most words. You can see this line here where we get the most common 10 words. Most common is a method for common number of words. You can see the comments on the method that tells you what it does. And then here we're inputting an integer value that tells us how many common or which top number of common words we want, in this case 10. And then we're just going to do a simple word count on another word that we desire to know about. So data in this case, data being a key topic in the class. So we will see how often does data show up in our text. So we'll go ahead and run this and see what kind of output we get. So we just, again, simply run it as a Python module. You might have to set it up, your interpreter, before you actually execute this, but mine is already set up. So here we're executing it. It takes a little while sometimes to start. And you'll see what's going to happen first is you're going to see a number of texts being read. They'll be printing out. These are the texts from the PDF files that I showed you earlier, the PDF scrape library that reads all those lines from the PDF. So we should see the PDF being read, and then we're going to execute these two methods, counter and word count. So now it'll go ahead and start executing. We just have to wait for it to actually give us some output. Okay, so what happened is you see in the top part of the output that's the line of the PDF. So that's the actual raw PDF text that's being read and printed to the screen. Of course, that's unnecessary. In some ways, it actually slows down my code execution, but I did it obviously just to sort of indicate the kinds of information that's being read. So that's interesting, but we're not actually analyzing that. It's basically the raw data. What we are analyzing is things like this count. So what you're seeing here are those outputs of the 10 most common words. You see there's 3 rows, so we're returning essentially a matrix of information. Those 3 rows of data represent the 3 files. Each one has 10 common words, so essentially it's 3 by 10 return of information there that we're getting. We're printing each one out, and we get these 3 rows. So we can see that command, data, image, module, all those are common words, and these are the number of words are also printed next to them. So 15, 14, 10. And in this case below, we also focus on the specific word called data. And using that method, what I did is I counted the number of words and determined percentage. Now, notice in the word count method, we're using nothing more than essentially basic Python tools. Remember, texts are basically nothing more than lists of words. Oftentimes, not always, they can be individual letters, for instance, as strings. But strings can be taken as an item, and sentences can be treated as essentially, or words can be treated as items within a list, and that's how they are treated in this case. So because of that, we can use things like basic functions in lists to analyze what we have. So the number of words, we just simply ask it to do count. Count is a method that actually is found in a list. So it's a simple method that we can use to count how specific or how often a word shows up. We can also apply this float value here to find the length. Length, again, is another way we can find the length of a container. So a container being such things as lists. So length is a typical or a built-in Python function. So is float to turn it into a float value. And count is then used to essentially return how much count we have of a given word in a text. So text being the list that we have, and then count is a function within the list. So that's how we can determine the count and percentage of a specific word in a given list, or essentially a given document. So that's simply use simple Python functionality with very simple math to get that returned value. And then the counter is a little bit more sophisticated in that it uses this counter class that's built in collections, one of the Python libraries, and it has a number of functions that you can sort of look at, and these are some of the functions that are in it. But in this case, I'm going to use the most common sort of method, and if you look at that what I'm highlighting indicates to you what it actually does. And so that gives us the return value. So I actually executed the counter first. That's why I got the result up here. And then I executed the word count. So that's basically it for the counter example that we have.